Say fuck off to feathery content. There are several Goose puns throughout this, and we'll explain why what we're talking about is Goose themed a bit later on. But essentially, we're going to be looking at how you can make brand content with brand tone of voice turn into performance content. So first, really little overview of me. I'm owned digital media marketing specialist. I've been working in retail, online and offline, for 15 years. I've largely worked in the beauty sector, the luxury niche beauty sector, worked with brands including Estee Lauder companies, and Philips, and Procter & Gamble, and Pierre Fabre, and as well as work with some of the world's largest agencies, and reside at the fabulous Flaunt, a brand name which suits me down to the ground. And I've been here since 2019, and I am the Director of Natural Search. And that encompasses everything from digital PR to content to technical SEO to UX and CRO. It's quite a few things. So the broad online user journey kind of sits with me, as well as I say, SEO and inbound natural search. So the first thing I kind of want to get into is that there's this paradigm that we kind of have, that when you're looking at a website, you have brand content at the top, and that's kind of your fluffy, lovely, written by a brand manager. You know, it's not designed to be performance content. And then at the bottom, you then shove all the garbage content that's kind of, you know, you're really, you know, if you are looking for lamps, then we are the #1 reseller of lamps, lampsdirect.co.uk. You've all seen it. We've all seen it a million times. You never read that text at the bottom. But is this content performance content? Is any of this content performance content? Now, normally you would assume that it's the bottom bit that's performance and the top bit that's not, and it's part of your brand journey. But no, I want you to kind of change your idea of this and see that every piece of content, whether it is from at the bottom, whether it is in the menus, whether it is any piece of content that sits on the page, images, video, anything, it is all performance content. Performance content is actually a really naff word, because it's kind of old-fashioned. It's when Google used to kind of zone in on certain bits of the website for content. But now, as Google is getting closer and closer to being able to understand websites almost as well as humans do, all content is performance content. And I think if there's anything anyone takes away from today, it's that all content is performance content and should be treated as such. But then when we talk about performance content, we think about keywords, and we think about ramming in as many keywords as possible. So an example kind of give is, you know, as I say, the lamps example, but this one is with t-shirts. So you'd have, say, your SEO people has come to you as a brand copywriter and copywriting team and go, right, okay, you're going to write about this. Well, here are your keywords. And they'll use blasphemous phrases like keyword density, which is very, very, very old-fashioned, and a very old-fashioned way of looking at it. And you would say, take these 5 different keywords, and you would write a piece of content and kind of stuff them in as much as possible. Say things like, if you are looking for a men's purple t-shirt, then our range of men's purple t-shirts are great for t-shirts that like men in purple. You know, we've all seen it. But Google, as of the last few years, is now understanding, probably the last 5 or 6 years, is now understanding entities. It's understanding that men's purple t-shirts is relating to one thing. It has a comprehension of what that is. And so now if you type variations of those phrases into Google, you will usually get very, very similar listings. Now, certain orders of words can change it, and I'm going to get on to kind of how and why. But essentially, you don't have to be coming up with these infinite variations, ramming them in, sort of, you know, and sending them out to Google and hoping for the best that it's going to rank. It's just a very old way of looking at things. And then kind of having that battle between your brand tone of voice and your SEO people going, there's not enough keywords in it. So 15% of Google queries are new. So every time somebody 15% of the time, every time somebody puts in a query into Google, it's brand new. It's never been done before. A lot of this has been driven by voice search, which I think people thought it was going to be a lot bigger than it was. And whilst it has been important and impactful as voice search, I think everybody, 5, 6 years ago was thinking that, voice search was going to replace it. It just doesn't. It doesn't. You don't want to be, you're in bed in the middle of the night looking for something on Amazon. You don't want to start going, where do I find the light bulbs? it's always going to be text. It's going to be text for the foreseeable. But as I said, 15% of queries are new, and that's been driven largely by a more conversational tone in how a lot of people react with Google. Kind of go for a very dead old meme here, but yes, what is that thing called on the cooker that's a triangle with the wavy lines? But you know what I mean, you know, on the knob, and it's the, I think, is it the grill with the fan assist? But these are the kind of things you can start typing into Google, and Google's now able to understand that a lot more accurately. Instead of just looking at keywords and trying to align keywords with keywords on pages, it's understanding a little bit more what you're looking at, that what that thing on the cooker might be called, and that the triangle thing with the wavy lines is relating to the cooker. And it kind of, it does this from BERT, and BERT launched in 2018. And it stands for bidirectional encoder representations from transformers, which, if you don't remember that, I mean, I don't, it's written here, I barely remember, it's supposed to be my job. But what this means is that Google can read text from left to right, right to left, and try and understand the importance of the words and how they relate to each other. So, for example, 9 to 5 and quarter to 5, 2 in both of those contexts have a slightly different meaning, which is very obvious to humans. But if you think about a robot, you know, who maybe doesn't see these things in the same way, particularly traditionally, BERT is designed to overcome that it starts to understand the relationship, and it can do that by reading forwards and backwards and trying to pick out that language and then understand the entities, understand what the intent might be. So if you take that, what is that thing called on the cooker with the triangle wave lines above it? A really great search result of oven symbol guides explained by Neff, the cooker people. And this is kind of the example of that. I am certain that I put into Google a few days ago is a completely brand new search query, but Google is still able to give me a really, really great SERP with only 83 results, but it's very accurate. These people also ask, it's very much in the same ballpark for what is arguably a very difficult to understand search term, and not really how people were searching 10, 15 years ago. You're searching for, you know, phone, buy phone. It's, as I say, it's become a lot more conversational. So how does Google do this? So Google has been working very hard on its ability to process natural language. Version 1 of this, I think the beta was launched in 2015, but the version 1, the public release of Google's natural language API, rolled out in 2016. It really got into gear. It really started stepping things up with a lot of the features that we use today in 2017, and then Google BERT rolled out in 2019. Now, whilst we can't be certain that the Google Natural Language API uses BERT, it's very, very likely that it does. You can use the Natural Language API to do models that you train yourself that just looks at the kind of stuff that you look at, or a pre-trained model that Google puts in that within reason should understand any piece of content in any field, and it does a really good job. And every year it's getting better and better and better. And we believe that it would be very naive to think that Google's algorithm does not use this fabulous piece of very premium technology that Google developed. And when we've done tests to that effect on that premise, we've got really great results from it. So taking that really bizarre search term that I put in, this is how Google Natural Language API kind of processes and looks at sentences like that. It can pull out the verbs. It's showing you the relation and the dependency of the words. It really is quite clever at understanding what it is you're trying to say. And every day, every week, every month, every year, it's getting better and better and better and better. So we know that we need to be able to write in a brand tone of voice. We know that keyword stuffing doesn't really work anymore. But we know that we need to be able to write text that Google can understand, rather than, as I say, throwing it out into the ecosystem, hoping that Google ranks it, hoping that, you know, it works. And then if not, going back and continuing to reiterate it, or writing thousands and thousands and thousands of words when you don't need to. So, you know, long pieces of content can be very good, but only if it's relevant. But if you are writing 9 paragraphs just because you're trying to talk about, you know, one aspect of purple t-shirts, it's spammy, it's garbage, people don't read it, Google doesn't like it, we have to be accurate. And so Google's Natural Language API, as part of its cloud suite, is a really great place that we've looked. And from that, we've built with Google Natural Language API at its core, Goose. And Goose is our natural language processing tool. By the way, this is not a sales pitch. It's, you know, if you want to know more about it afterwards, we'll, you know, I'll and all that, give us a shout. But I'm kind of wanting to explain the reasons why this is so important. So firstly, Goose. Oh God. So I live in North Bradford, and there's a place called Braithwaite Pond, and I was attacked by a goose. It was a whole thing. It was the weekend before, and when we were kind of deciding we're building this, like, what do we call it? And I went Goose. I think I'd maybe taken a Cocodamol or something, but that's why we called it Goose, and it stuck. And we've developed a whole brand around Goose. So yeah, just be careful of things you say sometimes because it can get carried away. So we developed Goose, and what Goose allows us to do is, as I say, use Google's natural language processing API to review content. Now we can do all sorts of cool stuff, like we can review whole websites. We can literally do a website crawl, bang every single URL of a website into it, and then it spits out what Google thinks the website is talking about, what things it pulls out, and that allows us to audit content. It allows us to iterate content. For example, if we're writing a small piece of text and we're wanting to make sure that Google understands it, we can try it and try it and try it and try it. As I say, rather than putting it out into the ecosystem and hoping that Google understands it, we can get a much better idea of how Google's perceiving the text we write before we even publish it. So, as I said, we can then take 1,000 words of garbage content and compress that into 60 words of garbage. No, 60 words of very good, useful, insightful content. That is better for users, is better for the search engine because Google's not having to read through, you know, pages and pages and pages of garbage. Everybody's happy, everybody wins. And it also allows us to combine that brand tone of voice and find that middle ground. So, oh God, I thought we'd change this. Again, me Goose to L content. Thanks, Dan, for that one. So this is kind of bringing all of that together. So in my life, I have had many heated and vivacious discussions with brand managers, trying to get a balance between a brand tone of voice and something that people and Google will understand. And it's often a back and forth that has led to compromises where nobody wins, I think. And again, that's what kind of drove the need to build this and to look more into the natural language API, because as I say, all content is performance content. It shouldn't be a split of brand and SEO content. It should all merge into one. So the example would be, if you're the SEO, I'm the SEO copywriter, as I say. Now, this is based on a real life example for one of the world's largest international flower delivery websites. You probably know what I'm talking about, who brought in a new brand person. I was the director of SEO at the time, and we were trying to write a page about lilies. Should be really clean cut. This is not what we actually wrote. I would never have something like this, but you know, we've all seen this content. We love lilies. If you're looking for lilies, then we have the UK's best selection of lily bouquets. White lilies are one of the best-selling lilies from all the lilies we sell. We've all seen that, and it's total garbage. So we run that through Goose, and what does it tell us? Right, it tells us that Google is 100% confident that the text is about flowers. Well, I should damn think so. And Google is 98% confident that your text is about special occasions. So that's pretty good. Problem solved. Stick that on the website, it'll rank. It won't. Google understands and knows, again, you know, we often use this keyword density, that you're trying to keyword stuff, but the actual quality of that, those two sentences is absolute garbage. Even from little things like, you know, Google looks at interactions, it uses Chrome data, which Google pretended they don't use Chrome data, and then it turns out they do use Chrome data, you know, where it can see how long you're looking at something, and if you're just looking past, all these different metrics, as well as Google's natural language API can tell you that that piece of text is garbage, even though it, in theory, ticks the right boxes. And that's what you'd have your SEO person saying without Goose going, no, it's got the keywords in, it's relevant, da, 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 da. And you're going, but I can't put that on the website. And that's where that thing kind of starts. The next piece of text, I honest to God wish I was joking. It was before I was at Flaunt, and I actually spoke with some of the people I work with and sent this piece of text to go, am I quoting this correctly? And every single person said, yes, absolutely. So this is what came back from the brand manager. Cara Delevingne of flowers. Lilies arrive in the post, cocooned and subdued, but place them in water and pow wow, look at them now. Now, I'd wondered if she'd had a stroke, because I damn nearly did. And it was there's brand content and there's that. But again, it started that debate of, well, this is where we want to go with the brand. We want to make it really out there, really wacky, really, really fun. And I think kind of, you know, they needed to be compromised on their part. But again, versus the really drab, boring Lilies content, there needs to be a middle ground. Now, at the time, I was saying, you know, Google's not going to understand it. People aren't going to understand this. Well, how do you know? How do you know? I think they will. How do you know? I think they will. Well, pretty easy now. You know, I think as we would all agree, I don't think what Goose is telling us is anything, you know, revolutionary here. It's 58% confidence about celebrities and entertainment news, and it's 57% confident it's about news. Did pull out flowers and lilies, which is good, but the highest salience, you know, that Google felt that the most important part of that piece of text was the mention of Cara Delevingne, and yeah, so I think if I'd have had that then, it would have made this conversation a lot easier. So then over the last week, we've kind of gone away, we've looked at this, we've kind of looked at this piece of text again. I've got to relive this memory again and again and again and again. And we wrote something new. This is after what now? 3 years, 2-3 years. Lilies are a classic go-to flower. It looks great in any bouquet, floral arrangement or centerpiece, with its beautifully distinct and definitively floral scent that captures many of life's most important moments. Our lilies come in many different colors and types. I would argue that's a very impactful piece of text. It definitely is and was for the brand more aligned to their actual tone of voice. It actually only mentions the word lilies twice, but it's about what also is said around that. Now, this piece of text, it's 2 sentences. This took an hour to write. So it's definitely an iterative process. It doesn't make it quick and you can just, you know, throw out content. It just means that we can edit this and edit each word and change each word and twist and check and move things around until we get the right result. And when we ran through this for the last time on Goose, 98% confident that the text is about flowers, 95% confident that the text is about special occasions, 58% salience on lilies that Google felt was the most important, flowers, centerpiece, bouquet, arrangement, scent, lilies, moments. I would have no problem putting that piece of text live, and I would, you know, defy any brand manager who, you know, if as long as it's aligned to their tone of voice, who wouldn't love that piece of content. And through using content like this, we've been able to work with our clients to drive some incredible opportunities to be able to shrink pieces of text down, as I say, from 1,000 words to 60 words. And I believe this is the future of content writing. SEO copywriters who are writing from a technical perspective, you know, whilst that skill is still important, it's more about that storytelling, and it's why we've been able to build within the natural search team a storytelling, more editorial proposition that's underpinned by great tech and drives performance, even though you wouldn't read it and think that is performance content.